Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Love ya, Caleb here. I'm going to be reacting to David Cross, Why America Sucks at Everything. If you don't know, David Cross is a comedian, and I don't know, it seems like the videos people most watch include either America or Norway, and foreigners like to dump on America a lot, so let's jump into this. I always try to be honest with what I think. You know, if you disagree, fine. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Let's see. Gravel Institute. Is that somebody's name? I wouldn't call my institute Gravel. Anyway. It's funny. I wonder if people who make this type of thing have ever been basically anywhere South, Central America or Africa or Asia, because a lot of countries do a lot worse than America. But anyway.
America is the greatest country on earth, the strongest, the richest, the most powerful country on earth.
I mean, it's the richest overall, but not per capita. Maybe subtitles might help some people here.
American, I'm sure you've heard that roughly 135 times a year. 235 if you...
People don't really say that anymore. When I was growing up, yeah, people talked about that a lot, but David Cross is much older than I, so I'm sure he had heard it most of his life.
Go to public school. 335 if you go to a Christian academy. We're told that Americans have the best lives of any people in the world.
Oh no. Oh no! This video is already starting out horribly. I haven't heard that in even longer than America is the best country in the world, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone in America that believes that. Unless they're in like a rural area. Actually, I'd say your life is probably much better if you're living in a rural area than if you're living in a city area in America. Anyway, yeah, I mean, on average, Americans are doing pretty well. On average, that I'm saying, if the mean, if you divide up all the wealth and divide it, but the median income, I'm guessing, is quite poor. Yeah, definitely not on average doing the best in the world, though. But anyway, let's...
That we have low taxes, small...
Taxes aren't that low. Government isn't that small.
Small government, and the highest living standard...
And the living standards in that high. Dude, okay, he's just like going like way... Sometimes there's this logical fallacy where... I don't even know if it's a logical fallacy. People try to prove their point by way over-exaggerating. I think it is a straw man because this is such a wild over-exaggeration. And you say, see, haha, they're wrong, it's not true. When it's like, people don't really say that. At one point, this was true, but, you know, those days are long gone, and I don't think this video is that old, so I think it's disingenuous and just not true to say, like, highest living standards, what did he say before this? Low taxes. Just not true. It's just not true. Even people who I know who make below the average wage in America, I think at least 25% is taken out in taxes, probably more 30. I don't consider that low. I would consider low something under 10% maybe.
Low taxes, small government.
Small government, definitely not. Very intrusive government. The government's constantly spying on people. There's tons, a bajillion laws. Things are getting more and more litigious. Things are getting more and more bureaucratic. If I wanted to paint my house, I might have to pull a permit or something. If I want to do something inside my house, I might have to pull a permit. It's really ridiculous.
And the highest living standards on earth.
Obviously, no. I mean, I could name a million. Monaco, Switzerland, Norway. I don't know the living standards, but I know that the income is very wealthy for Qatari citizens. Anyway.
Earth. And most inaccurately, that we're the freest.
I wouldn't say that's the most inaccurate. I would say the other ones were more inaccurate, but definitely not true that we're the freest.
Well, It is partly true. America is the richest country, not just in the world, but in the history of the world. It's really hard to comprehend just how rich we are. We have 18 million people who are millionaires. American households own about $100 trillion in wealth, an almost unthinkable amount of money. Okay, so America is the richest country ever. But there's a curious paradox.
Concentrated wealth.
Most Americans actually have a much worse standard of living than people who live in poorer countries like Germany or Finland or Britain. But
I found it really helpful taking advanced statistics, in that you can really choose how you phrase things to make it seem like your argument is correct. So he says most Americans have a worse standard of living than people who live in poor countries. It sounds like he's comparing the bottom to overall in Germany and Finland and Britain, which would be not very straightforward, or I think a disingenuous argument. It's not. It's comparing things of proper equality.
Living than people who live in poorer countries like Germany or Finland or Britain. But how can that be? That shouldn't make any sense. Well, here's the shitty deal. Americans get significantly worse services because our tax dollars don't fund them. So, of course, our services are worse. And thus we enjoy less happy lives than
Like what? I'm wondering what services he's talking about.
people who live in the aforementioned countries. Not that difficult a concept to conceive, really. You get what you pay for, said the cartoon dog to the other cartoon dog. And while you might think
That's true, but I mean, we spend, I think it's close to $15,000 per student per year in public education, and you can get a much better education by paying for private for maybe like a third of the cost or half the cost. So it's not always you get what you pay for. I mean, we definitely waste a ton of money and don't get what we pay for a lot of the government-run organizations.
reason American tax dollars don't fund as many services is because we pay lower taxes than other countries. That's not even true. When you add federal, state, local, and sales taxes and include other costs and services that our taxes don't cover but other countries' taxes do, like our uniquely high health insurance premiums, you'll find that Americans actually give away more of their wages than most of the developed world. For example, in Canada, for a married worker with 2 kids, all of the previously mentioned costs combined, from taxes to health insurance premiums, make up only 11% of the average wage. In the UK, it's just about 26%. Meanwhile,
26?
once you tack on the cost of our outlandish health insurance premiums, you're spending a whopping 43.
This is, to me, not an honest and fair comparison, because a lot of people never hit their premium. So he's tacking on something that a lot of people just never pay for. If you get insurance in America, often what happens is, like, your premium is, let's just say it's $5,000 and you make $50,000. So that's like 10% of your income, but you're also paying for the insurance itself, which might cost, I don't know, let's just say $25,000 for insurance itself and $25,000 for the premiums, which is actually a decent deal. So that's already 10%, so I could easily see it being twice that. It would be 20, which would still be better than Britain, but it's not great. But like I said, that $2,500 and $2,500, half for the premium, half for the insurance itself. That half you might not end up using at all. You might go a whole year without going to the doctor. Most people go, so you probably end up spending at least $500. But still, that's $3,000, less than 10% of your wages. People on the lower end, people who make really not much money, they get Medicaid, so that's just paid for. I think that's if you make under like 10 or 20,000 a year. What's really difficult is the people who make just over that 25,000 or something, between 25 and like 50,000. That's a bad place to be. In which case, I could see it being, I don't know, 20, 30% or something of the wage. But 43%, it's just not true. For some people, if they have severe medical issues, then maybe it's true. But
3% of your paycheck. That's more than France, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. In real reality, Americans keep much less of what we own than in other countries. In other countries, their government takes a bit more tax, but then gives that money back to their citizens in the form of healthcare or job support. or a general safety net for all vulnerable citizens, no matter how dusky they are.
Dusty.
So what do
I don't even know what that means.
Americans get for the money we pay in? Well, sure, we get a crumbling infrastructure, shameful homelessness, and millions of hungry, neglected children, but also get some of the worst services in the developed world. Again, our healthcare. American healthcare is simultaneously the most expensive, the least efficient, and the least effective healthcare system in the developed world. Hey, the devil's trifecta. And in exchange for this extremely expensive, inefficient healthcare system, what do we get?
I question how they come up with least effective. The other two I could see, but least effective. The other two are, I mean, certainly most seems the most expensive. Certainly seems probably least efficient, least effective. I'm wondering how you measure that.
Well, we get some of the worst health outcomes in the developed world. We have fewer hospital beds per capita than people in Turkey or Brunei. Americans have a lower life expectancy than people in Lebanon or Cuba. And in the Mississippi Delta?
I think that recently changed. I'd have to look that up.
Americans have a lower life expectancy than people in Lebanon or Cuba.
The beds I find a little weird because, I mean, the beds, they could just have a bunch of beds in a bunch of like in one room. So then technically that's true. I mean, that's something I would look into. I'm looking up Cuba life expectancy. 78.8 years. Okay. And United States 78.79. So it's 0.01 difference or whatever.
And in the Mississippi Delta and much of Appalachia, life expectancy is lower than in Bangladesh.
A lot of that has to do with diet and lifestyle, and education, intelligence. Not the best in that area.
In fact, in 2017, the United Nations sent a commissioner to West Virginia to document what he saw, and he described, quote, third world conditions of absolute poverty, unquote. We even have a higher infant mortality.
But I mean, he's just picking out. Why doesn't he go to Palo Alto or something? He's kind of cherry picking here.
Mortality rate than people in Russia and Serbia. In every single metric, America does worse across.
That's bizarre, but I think it comes down to certain cultures. So, like in urban areas, a lot of people having babies they didn't intend. I mean, it's a hard thing to deal with. I think you have to deal with mental health in the first place, emotional, psychological issues. That's a big feat. So to compare that, I think is not great, considering like the issues that America has with urban populations.
Every single metric, America does worse across the board. So why is healthcare so expensive?
Every single metric? Well, every single metric that he said. I mean, there's way more metrics you could come up with, but anyway.
So why is healthcare so expensive? Because it's so complicated. You have to look for in-network physicians, schedule an established care appointment, beg for coverage from your insurance company that couldn't care less about you, and that's if you're lucky enough to have good insurance. Compare that to Britain and all of those other evil, socialist-like countries where it's simple. Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it. That's it. I'll repeat that. Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it. And here's the best part.
I should have gone when I was in Britain, but I don't know if like stuff like if I came in, I've had an ankle issue for a long time. I don't know if they were like, yeah, we'll give you a surgery. I wonder if it's just like I'm feeling like I have the flu. Can I get some medication or something? I don't know if they'd give you a surgery. If they would, I'm coming to Britain.
Even though Britain offers healthcare for free, their system is actually a lot cheaper to run than ours. Per capita healthcare spending in the US is almost 3 times what it is in Britain, and almost 5 times what Canadians spend. In fact, Americans spend the most per person of any country in the world for healthcare. But the free market is more efficient, you screech. But in America...
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't really have free. We're paying a ton of money for the Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is for older people, like people over 65, which basically gets everything paid for, I believe. and Medicaid, similar, but for poor people. And then now that they've made it so that health insurance companies can't turn people down for pre-existing conditions, if I want to get health insurance, I'm basically paying a lot of what I'm paying is going towards keeping other people healthy and alive, which would be okay if it were just much more efficient. There's a lot of people getting money that aren't needed, so like bureaucracy, and there's a lot of people who are kind of just taking much more money out of the system than they're putting it in. It is really inefficient, but things like Obamacare didn't really help because they put in an alternative, like a insurance that you can buy. It's not just like in Britain where you just get help if you need it. That's what he's allegedly saying. It's like you get help, but you're still paying, and it's like from what I've heard, the insurance from the government is not really cheap either. It's just a bad, like, I do think it would just be better to have a system like there is in Britain or Sweden, like most other decent countries. I will say that I have visited a public healthcare place in Brazil, and it was really horrible. I waited like 3 hours and didn't even get help. The only way I got help was by paying to go see somebody, and that cost a good amount of money, especially considering it was Brazil. It was a lot of money. So if it's done well, that's great. Anyway, that was a lot of rambling.
Private systems often aren't efficient at all. Private drug companies have an incentive to charge whatever they can get away with for pharmaceuticals. In Canada, a carton of insulin costs about $20. In the US, it costs $300.
Yeah, that's atrocious. I don't understand it because I would think that someone would come in and be like, hey, I can make this way cheap. It's like if you want to sell toothbrushes for $1,000, it's like it's never going to work because there's so many people making toothbrushes and like they want to win business. So I mean, I wouldn't see why somebody come in and just be like, I'll sell insulin for like $280 or something. Then who would buy from the company that's selling for $300? I don't know why it seems to only happen with drugs. Is it that it just takes a long time to get a patent or to get approval? I don't know what it is, but there's something bad here. I know that Mark Cuban has really recently started a company that's selling like generic drugs for way cheaper. So I do see a glimmer of hope, things starting to change there. Anyway.
$100. And with private insurance companies footing the bill, hospitals have an incentive to get as much money out of patients as possible too. In 2015, the average cost of an MRI scan in the US was $1,119, but it was only $215 in Australia. Spain, about $181. And our healthcare system is so inefficient that we spend over a third of our cost on administration.
Exactly what I was saying before. I said bureaucracy, I meant administration, but it's similar, right? It's just like people who are not really helping. Some help, but a lot.
The United States spends significantly more on administration than we spend on preventative or long-term health care. That's just not smart. Okay, we get it. We all know that.
It's funny, I just recently heard that like Norway did a study and they found that like preventative stuff is not really that like beneficial in terms of cost-benefit ratio, but I didn't look into it, that's just what I heard.
American healthcare is so much more expensive, you say, but that's the cost of having the freest freedom in God's favorite country. Well, guess what? Medical procedures that are totally free in Britain, like giving birth, cost tens of thousands of dollars in the United States. I mean, you want to talk about the cost of freedom. Sadly, because of these high costs, Americans often avoid going to the doctor, something almost half the population say they do.
I'm included in that.
With shoddy or non-existent health insurance, Americans will wait until their conditions force them into the emergency room where treatment is far more expensive. Again, not a smart system. Quite often, they end up putting off medical visits and dying. Susan Finley, a 53-year-old Walmart employee in Colorado, got pneumonia and took 1 day off of work beyond what Walmart's policy allows. So of course Walmart's gonna Walmart, which they did by firing her.
Oh no.
Without her job, she lost her nominal health care coverage, she struggled to find new work, and after avoiding a visit to the doctor for flu-like symptoms, she was found dead in her apartment.
It's really sad. There was this great quote, you should judge a country by how well they treat the most needy in the society, the least advantaged. And this is not good in America.
When Americans do manage to get treated, they frequently can't afford it. Simple, life-saving treatments can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if they don't have really good insurance, they're forced to take on medical debt. Tens of millions of Americans owe medical debt, often into the tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, in a country like Britain or Norway, medical debt is almost unheard of. But hey,
Yeah, Norway, I mean, is just so wealthy it's not totally fair to compare. They don't have the problems that we have. I could go into that for a while, but yeah, mental health and certain populations with low IQ, low morals, poor culture, and also we keep policing the world, which I think it's bad. I think we shouldn't do that, but a lot of money goes there. We have much more corruption.
that's why GoFundMe is such a critical component of American healthcare. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. I'll repeat that. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. America is such a strong, powerful, rich, and great country that its citizens have to beg strangers on the internet for money so they can get life-saving treatments that are free in the rest of the developed world. But hey, that's just healthcare. Americans get terrible deals wherever you look. Let's take work for it.
I often try to come up with like theories, like what there must be some sense here. A lot of times it comes to sort of things that politicians don't want to say but secretly advocate for. Just to give you another example, I think the reason maybe we turn such a blind eye to some immigrants illegally coming in is that we get a lot of production from them for a lower cost.
Americans work longer hours than people in any other rich country in the world, and that's not because they enjoy sleep deprivation and not...
That's not true. I know Japan, definitely they have longer work hours.
Any other rich country in the world, and that's not because they enjoy sleep deprivation.
And I think there might be other countries, not sure, but I know certainly Japan.
And not seeing their families for days at a time. It's because they don't want to starve, or freeze, or die. See, America has the least generous job support programs, the least generous family benefits, and the least generous unemployment benefits of any wealthy country.
I would question that and what he considers wealthy.
It's one of the only countries on Earth that doesn't guarantee paid time off for vacations. It doesn't even help provide paid time off for parents who just had a child.
I did mention that in another video, and this is, I think, not a great argument because it's like saying in the Nordic countries or some European countries that they don't have a minimum wage, but the industries have basically made it so that the lowest wage that someone will work is very high. So you could say, oh, they don't have minimum wage. Yeah, but there's something else to be said about it. And so similarly here, don't have paid time off for vacations and don't have mandatory paid time off for parents. Yes, but a lot of companies will give money for those, so it's not the end-all be-all. But it is true in and of itself that it is not legally mandated.
Help provide paid time off for parents who just had a child. And it's not coincidental that we're also one of the most hostile countries to workers' rights. America has one of the lowest unionization rates in the entire world. Maybe this deprivation, our refusal to give people the means to lead a good, dignified life commensurate with how rich our country is, can explain a bit of what we've seen in the United States over the last few decades. Fraying communities, rising rates of depression and suicide, huge numbers of deaths from drug overdoses. These so-called deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdoses, alcoholic liver disease, they're one big reason why American life expectancy has actually started to decline over the last few years.
True. Actually, I think that started about a decade ago, but I don't know if it's gone up or down. It might have gone up or down over the time, but it definitely did decline.
And with such poor conditions, it's not a surprise that poverty is so rampant in the United States. America devotes a smaller percentage of spending on social welfare than any other industrialized economy because, say it with me, socialism is evil. It's evil. Go to Denmark and try telling those happy, healthy families.
So this is where there's an issue, because the culture is so much more different in Denmark as a whole. People who are Danish are much more similar than if I pick out someone from the inner city in Detroit as opposed to someone in rural Utah. We have much more mental health issues, much more long-term emotional, much more instability with certain people. It takes a while to get that figured. And there's a lot of people who just kind of want to skate by in life in America, where it's just not as prevalent in places like Denmark. I personally know a lot of those people, and I personally know a lot of people who have figured out some way to get money from the government and basically live without doing anything. So those two things is that takes money out, and that we don't get the production from those people. A large amount of people in inner cities are raised without a father. Causes really a ton of problems, a lot of lack of love, in which case you may very well start to go crazy and take out your issues on the world. There's a lot of people who really could do things, and I know them, but they don't because they figure out a way to rig the system, and they will try to never work again.
Enjoying their
Whereas in Denmark, I think it's not as prevalent.
paid vacation, that their system of government is evil. Guess what? I guarantee they'll know you're an American. But I digress. America also has the highest rate of child.
I mean, there's plenty of people outside of America that think socialism is evil too.
Child poverty of any developed country, and the highest percentage of workers earning significantly less than the national median income. That seems pretty evil to me, especially since such a tiny fraction take as much of your money for themselves and their family.
Yeah, I mean, this is less of a government organization problem as it is corruption. The government does this all the time. There's tons of social programs, but often it's like, okay, yeah, we'll help, we'll give food to the poor, we'll give shelter, we'll give you money to keep doing whatever you want. That's like 10% of the budget goes to that. And then, like he said before, administration, a ton of it will go to administration, and then somehow the rest will be divided up amongst whatever group is running that. So it'll be like a private, they'll get some sort of contract with the government, and then somehow most of the profit will go back to the owners of the business. Sometimes the government does it themselves, but sometimes they get contracts. So even if it is the government, a ton of that money will go towards stuff that doesn't really help the people.
As you will
So it's a culture thing. You have to get rid of the corruption.
let them.
Because even if you copy the exact same thing, everything the same in the Denmark, it wouldn't be beneficial in America. It might help a little, but it wouldn't help that much because people would figure out a way to get that money out for themselves. Really, really wealthy people or well-connected people, powerful people.
All the while, both parties smile and shake hands. Across every single metric, no people accept a worse deal than Americans today. High taxes, high cost of living for next to nothing in return from the government. The most expensive healthcare system for the worst health outcomes. More money taken from workers for the highest rate of child poverty. We are the richest country in the history of the world, but we have fewer miles of high-speed rail than Uzbekistan.
Does that really matter, though? Do we need high-speed rail?
We are the greatest country in the world, yet we have the most people in prison of any country, and the highest incarceration rate as well, and a higher rate of police killings than in Angola and Sudan. America is bad at everything because instead of choosing to make life better for people through a public healthcare system or more generous childcare policies or better public transit or programs of
No! Gotta charge my computer.
families, American law is designed and crafted to protect a class of parasitical middleman industries. Instead of
That's maybe the truest statement. Probably the truest statement he said in this whole thing. Do not disagree at all. Totally true.
using a proportionally tiny piece of the massive amount of the wealth in this country to make people's lives healthier and happier. Most of our elected leaders are, and have been for generations, engaged in a massive project of looting, gently and lovingly guiding as much money as possible from working people into the pockets of the well-connected and the ultra-rich. Think about that.
Yes.
As we start here.
That's exactly what I was saying. It's a moral issue. It's corruption. I just was saying that before. It's yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
Bring about the inevitable rise in homelessness, poverty, starvation, and sickness that will occur during these coming months.
A big problem is that corruption is legal in America. You can pay for, have lobbyists. You know, you give somebody money for a political campaign and they owe you a favor. Not really, and you can't be quid pro quo like that, but it is obviously implied.
And years in the greatest, strongest, richest, most powerful country on the face of the earth. I'm David Cross for the Gravel Institute.
Oh, Gravel. That's why. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the ending summed it up exactly what I was saying throughout. The details, not perfect, not terrible, but I think the ending thing was exactly right. And again, it's a moral issue, moral and cultural. People get the government they deserve on average, not picking out individuals, but on average. And America is becoming less and less of a moral country, so we're getting more and more corruption. They're perfectly correlated. Correlation doesn't prove causation, but I mean, you know, if you don't think so, okay, but that's what I think. You know, if I got something dead wrong, let me know. I'm trying to be honest with what I think. Thank you very much for watching. Love ya. If you would, like and comment and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Definitely comments is what I most like. I like hearing what people think. And yeah, love ya. Have a good one. Take care.